Thanks. Hello, council members. And I would just like to kind of start the presentation by acknowledging that land use authority rests primarily with local government, but the state does have a role in shaping development patterns, and especially within the Delta. As you all know, county general plans have to be consistent with the Delta Protection Commission's land use and resource management plan within the primary zone. And general plan updates and new development must be consistent with the Delta plan in both the primary and the secondary zones. So this other layer between local and state is the regional government, which Cindy mentioned is referred to as the Metropolitan Planning Organization. Some of those are also referred to as councils of governments. So the cities and counties come together and form these councils of government, and there are 3 of them that overlap with the Delta and the Sassoon Marsh. So there's a requirement out there that these councils of government or metropolitan planning organizations, the regional governments, develop sustainable community strategies. And the whole idea of that, I think the idea of sustainability has been around for quite a while now, but the whole idea is promoting more compact growth that's served by transit and encourages walking and biking, and generally reduces the need to drive and also reduces the associated greenhouse gas emissions associated with driving. And at the same time, these compact growth patterns have other benefits, such as protecting land for natural resource benefits and also agricultural land. So it's been recognized that there's multiple benefits associated with sustainable communities and developing these strategies. And the requirement is under the framework of a regional transportation plan, because there was already a need to plan regionally for transportation and provide a focus for the state and regional investments in transportation. So these transportation plans have been around for a while, and now so basically the sustainable community strategies are an element of that, and the carrot there is that once these are adopted, there's opportunities to get more state and federal funding for transportation. Then on the other hand, there is a stick associated with the sustainable community strategies, which is that the California Air Resources Board has to evaluate them and determine that they do meet the greenhouse gas reduction targets that they have set. So, and then another second carrot associated with the sustainable community strategy itself is that there's some relief from California Environmental Quality Act requirements if a development project is consistent with the sustainable community strategy. So how does this all relate back to the Delta Stewardship Council? Well, the Delta Reform Act ensures that the council coordinates with these regional governments in 2 different ways. It requires a review. So at this stage, for example, right now, there's a draft sustainable community strategy where the council is required to review it, provide comments back, and then if there's any inconsistencies discovered, the regional government is required to respond back to us about that. Secondly, once a sustainable community strategy is adopted, there is an opportunity for the regional government to grant exemptions to the covered action process for projects that are consistent with the sustainable community strategy. So those are the 2 main elements, the review process and the exemption process. So far we have really just dealt with the review process, and the 3 main areas we've looked at in the review process are consistency with urban boundaries in the Delta Plan, the protection of the habitat restoration opportunity areas, and the flood risk reduction aspects of the Delta Plan. And we've had, before SJCOG, we've had 2 reviews to date, although they both happened before the Delta Plan regulations were in place. So the first one that we had was back when the Delta Plan was only in its 5th draft, but the staff did review the consistency of the Sacramento Area Council of Governments Sustainable Community Strategy, which was adopted in 2012. And they did find that the urban boundaries were consistent, and they noted that sustainable community strategies projects cannot occur in wetlands or introduce new flood risk. So that is a benefit that is also consistent with the Delta plan. And they also noted, or I should say we, although I wasn't on staff then, but we as a staff also noted that there was a rural-urban connection strategy adopted by SACOG, the Sacramento Area Group. And that has a interesting aspect, which is an attempt to preserve agricultural land not merely by preventing development there, but also by keeping it economically viable. So the staff commended SACOG for that. The next one to come along was the Plan Bay Area, which was the name given to the Metropolitan Planning Commission and Association of Bay Area Governments Sustainable Community Strategy. So Plan Bay Area was just a really quick way of saying that. And so everybody likes that name. In any case, their Sustainable Community Strategy was adopted in May of last year, right around the same time that the Delta Plan was adopted. Their urban boundaries were consistent, and the Metropolitan Planning Commission actually did make some changes in response to our comments. They put a note in their plan that implementing agencies who are doing things under the rubric of the Sustainable Community Strategies should consult with the Delta Stewardship Council staff on Delta Plan consistency. They added mitigation measures that we suggested related to protecting farmland and protecting habitat connectivity, and they also recognized the role of the DSC in flood risk reduction. So we did identify 3 transportation projects that could have adversely affected the Sassoon Marsh that were identified in that plan, and that's something that we will be continuing to watch and work with collaboratively with the regional government and the local implementing agencies to look at that issue. So now we come to the third Sustainable Community Strategy, which is obviously the San Joaquin Council of Governments. And as Cindy mentioned, our 2 staffs have been meeting and talking regularly as they've been developing this strategy. And Tanisha's going to talk to you about Delta Plan consistency. And as far as the exemptions, I mentioned that there's 2 aspects, review and exemptions. So as far as the exemptions, we're going to continue to talk with these regional governments as well as the local governments about how to coordinate to ensure that Delta Plan consistency will still occur when and if these regional governments grant exemptions from the covered action process. That's something that we've all agreed that we need to work through and perhaps have some kind of formal agreement about how that's going to work. It's not spelled out yet, but it's something that we understand that we need to clarify for the future. So with that, I will